attended Vital City last year? By a round of applause. Okay. So for those who didn't make it, I also had the opportunity of hosting last year, and let me just say, and I say this very humbly, I crushed it. Okay, I did really well, and that's just not me saying that. That was the user feedback. So the Calgary Foundation has had me back this year for what is going to be my sequel. And I know what many of you are thinking, which is, Zain, aren't sequels always and universally better than the original? And the answer is yes, you're right. I mean, just take a look at Wonder Woman 1984. How do you improve on that perfection? Well, you add more Chris Pine for some reason, and you have plot holes, okay? And how about Jurassic Park? Great movie. Wrong. Jurassic World, that's a great movie, okay? Parks are small, world's not as small, okay? Jurassic World, okay? You go from fighting, I'm digressing a bit, you go from fighting dinosaurs fighting humans to dinosaurs fighting, say it with me everyone, giant grasshoppers, okay? You're with me. I guess what I'm trying to say is that this is going to be a masterpiece of a sequel performance on my part. And listen, if you don't like what I'm doing up here, two things. Number one, I'm almost done with this shtick. And number two, once again, and write this down, my name is Ken Lima Cuellar. And my home phone number is I actually have his whole phone number. I don't know how long I was going to go with that thing. But in all seriousness, folks, my name is Zain Velji. I'm a husband, a father to a 2-year-old, a community volunteer, and a proud Calgarian. And it is my honor to spend this time with you today to help us have this conversation as we celebrate community, as we grapple with its unique and real challenges, and as we share our vision of the future together. So thank you for being here tonight and being part of that broader conversation. You know, recently, we as a city, as a community, and as a country recognized National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, which focused on how allyship and decolonization can help advance reconciliation between Indigenous peoples and the non-Indigenous population. In that spirit of respect, reciprocity, and truth, we honor and acknowledge Mohkinstsis and the traditional Treaty 7 territory and oral practices of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, and the Iowa Nakota Nations, Chiniki, Bearspaw, Goodstoney, and the Tsuut'ina Nation. We acknowledge that this territory is also home to the Otipemisiwak Métis government and the Métis Nation within Alberta Districts 5 and 6. You know, as a child of immigrants, this was the place where I was born and which I have called home for the vast majority of my life. I consider myself fortunate to live, work, and play on this land, and I remember that we're all treated equal. Now, to provide a prayer and acknowledgement of the land from an Indigenous perspective, I'd like to welcome Elder Jackie Bromley.
Okay, before I start my prayer, I would just like to say I am very honored to be here. This is the second year that I've been invited to do an opening prayer. And I would just like to share something with you. It's a common teaching from many of the elders, is that as human beings, we did not just arrive in this time and place on our own. We carry the life stories and lived experience of our ancestors and those who have preserved so that our generations can live life in a good way. Our stories carried in the land, in the rock, in the rivers, in the whole environment coexisted in such a way that there was harmony between all beings within creation. We were capable of seeking treaties with each other to preserve life. It is those thoughts and peaceful energies that we breathe life into when we do the land acknowledgement. And I would like to, this is for me, is a reminder Usually before I start my prayer, every morning we should thank the Creator we call in our Indigenous ways, Ishchipetapi, source of life. We always call on the sun, Napi Nadokse. We give thanks to the Creator every morning for giving us another day. Today is a new day. Every day, give thanks to the Creator for the gifts that the Creator gave each and every one of us in here. We ask Creator to guide us with our 7 sacred teachings. The 7 sacred teachings is to love one another, to be honest, and to be humble, and to respect one another, and to tell the truth, and to always give words of wisdom and courage. These are very powerful teachings that we take with us to work, everywhere, with our family, and also when we do our prayer. We always pray for all the people that are homeless, because in our culture we say their spirits have left their body. All the people that are dealing with drugs, all the people that are sick in the hospital. And we must never forget our family, our children, our grandchildren, our parents, our grandparents, to always include them in your prayer. The Creator hears us when we pray. There's no special way of praying. And when we all pray together in your own way of praying, it makes our prayers very powerful. And I would like for you to join me to say a prayer. And I'm going to speak in my Blackfoot language, because I always feel very connected to my grandparents that have gone into the spirit world. I always ask them to hear my prayer. I ask Creator to give us guidance. Hayus chipeta pio, hayu na pinatuse, hayu ginokatsinchkat pinonan oksishchikoi, hayu nokpeki mukinonaki kanekichikus kitakidenchkat pinonaki. Ay keki matkuyim satka mukshi idasuka uawkeks. Es chistumikshi. Stukshi no kuksinonix, nisokuksinonix, nixistinonix. Mukske no kawatsimutskah pinon. An oktak pitokana saks pinon, an okamukshitsipstapix, so kikrimstan. Aisto ginonis tubeta pio. Kisto an na me ginichita piag gidenska pinon. Ane ginokanista po kamanista ken oksistikoyi. Ispomo ginon han. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jackie, for those powerful and thoughtful words alongside that prayer. They serve as an important reminder that Indigenous peoples help shape the land and the country we know today. Alrighty, folks, let me give you a rundown of what we're doing this evening. Now, did you know that that the Calgary Foundation this past year granted $75.4 million to over 1,200 charitable organizations. Give her a round of applause. Now, to bring that statistic to life, President and CEO Eva Friesen will highlight the impact of our collective work when she shares her always insightful report to community. Following her presentation, we'll have a conversation on the stage about creating spaces that foster a sense of belonging for all community members with three very interesting and insightful community builders, Sarian, Dwight Farahat, and Irfhan Rawji. And for those of you keeping score, yes, that is correct, we'll have 4 men joining the stage in order to fill the shoes of 1 woman there on after. Then to close the evening, we'll have the Calgary Foundation Board Chair Blaine Lennox, who will provide us with some final remarks. All sound good? Yeah? Good, I'm all about consensus building. I'll go one by one. If someone has a concern. The answer is yes, I was making fun of Jurassic World. That was the whole point, sir, at the back. Ladies and gentlemen, she has led the Calgary Foundation to fulfill its mission of for community forever for almost 20 years. She's energetic, effervescent, intelligent, and compassionate. I'm pretty sure she has more projects going on than most of us have unread emails. It is my pleasure to welcome to the stage Calgary Foundation's President and CEO, Eva Friesen.
Zain, I think it takes 6 men, not just 4. So and Zain, has anyone ever told you to say to a person when they're 19 that they're almost 20 is just like not a way to do it. So I've been here 19 years, for the record. And this amazing full room is just like, wow. It almost makes me speechless, but I have a speech, so it doesn't. And it was delightful to see so many old friends during the networking reception and meet some new ones. So I hope you all got to do that as well. This is a confidence clicker. Did you know that? I'll tell you after how it worked. This is a confidence podium, and I'm torn between where I should be. So we'll check it out. Now those of you, many of you were here last year, and we had Nick Saul from Toronto who talked to us about food insecurity from a poverty and an access lens. And he asked us to consider how we might work in collaboration for systemic changes, changing the societal structures that keep the problem of food insecurity in place. I thought I should tell you a bit about what happened after that evening, after he so inspired us, so that you didn't think that that inspiration died a silent death right after. So soon after the event, we hosted 15 organizations working on food security to learn about the complex issue in the sector and where Calgary Foundation's support might be most valued. They told us that they needed support in convening, that they needed help to identify who's all working on food insecurity, and they needed tools to help them host complex conversations. In response, we created a toolkit and offered it widely, and we created an actor map showing all the organizations in Calgary who work on food security. An actor map is a powerful systems change tool that can help make connections and address the desire for more matchmaking of like-minded organizations. An actor map is a snapshot of a point in time, and we know that systems are dynamic and constantly changing, but when we finalized that map in early 2024, we found over 180 groups in Calgary working in food security. We also heard from Nick Saul that organizations need to play an active role in advocating for systems change. Calgary Foundation is now convening groups such as the YYC Food Collaborative, who are working on advocating as a collective. And of course, we continue to provide grants to support food security across our community. Last year, we granted $2.5 million to this critical issue. And we all know the issue of food security has not gone away, it has not been resolved, and we saw that in our quality of life report that was just released last week. 39% Calgarians are skipping meals so their kids can eat. 26% of Calgarians are using the food banks. And in this one of the most livable cities in the world, 47% of us are just $200 away from failing to meet our financial commitments. We are experiencing rapid economic growth, with GDP forecast to be the fastest growing of all metro areas in Canada. And yet, the Quality of Life report tells a story of a city split in two, the haves and the have-nots. But it's not all gloom and doom. The report also outlines our collective hope. We believe arts help our community. 64% think public art helps create a sense of belonging in their community. 71% feel the arts help them appreciate other perspectives and cultures. Despite our troubles, we've found solace in each other. 76% have a strong sense of belonging to their community. 81% think Calgary is a great place to live. We have found comfort in our neighborhoods. 93% of us like the neighborhood we live in, and the same percent have access to parks and green spaces, which we highly value. And most importantly, we have each other. The report tells us that what Calgarians value most is our relationships, followed by health, then money, freedom, and holidays. Now, there's a few copies of that report on every table. Please feel free to take one, and it's also on our website available to you. The annual meeting is not complete without numbers, so here's the vital statistics from the past year. New gifts received by the foundation last year were $81.1 million. 51 new people established a new fund at the Calgary Foundation, and that brings the total asset base of the organization to $1.4 billion. Now, it's the generosity of Calgarians, past and present, that makes your community foundation possible. That generosity has not faltered despite the ups and downs in our economy. We know Calgarians care about their community and give when they can to the causes they care deeply about. And it's our purpose and our pleasure to serve your philanthropy. And the reason we serve philanthropy is to benefit community. And Zain stole my thunder. Last year alone, $75.4 million granted to community to 1,221 organizations. And that brings our cumulative granting since the beginning of the foundation to just over $900 million. I'm looking forward to crossing the $1 billion mark on that number, and that'll be cause for a party. Assisting in that grant-making process are about 100 volunteers who serve on our very many granting committees. Many of you are here tonight. We value your contributions. You bring your experience to the table and ensure that granting decisions are made by the community for the community. Thank you so much for all that you do for us. The investment returns from the endowment is what powers our grant making. The wheels on the bus go round when that number is 8% over the long run, and you'll see we are just about at 8%. We need 8% because 5% is granted, 1% is for the cost recovery to run the place, and 2% we like to reinvest in the fund to keep pace with inflation. And I thank all of the investment committee members, volunteers with the organization, as well as our investment team for their hard work in that regard. Now, these results, all the numbers, are achieved by a team of very fine people that I get to work with every day. We are committed to serve you. We're also committed to celebrating Halloween. It's coming up shortly. When we fall short in our service, and we sometimes will because we're all humans, we will own it and we will work to improve it. And a year in review is not just about numbers. There's many, many things, as you know, that happen in a year to an organization. And this year, we had a very profound loss on our staff team when we lost a 15-year staff member, Grace Chu, to a sudden illness. And Grace had been with us for 15 years. Grace had trained everybody on her team, and we found ourselves suddenly very at loss. I know many of you who have funds in the foundation will have worked with Grace. And so it took us a long time to Well, we haven't got over it yet. We still talk about Grace. We have pictures of Grace all over. Grace is in this photo of our staff team. And I want to do a special warm welcome to Grace's husband, Rob, and their 2 children who are here tonight, 2 adult children who are here to join us. We're governed by a board of directors, and I'm really happy by photos to introduce you to the 17 of the finest volunteers in this community. They bring varied skills and experiences, but they all share a deep commitment to the mission of the Calgary Foundation and to be of service to our community. On behalf of the entire team of staff, I want to thank all the board members, many of you are here tonight, for contributing your wisdom and your time to our work. It's an honor and a pleasure to work with all of you. The theme of this event is Roots of Wellbeing, and we are exploring the role of places in fostering belonging. Can places bridge the gap in this city split in 2? To set the stage for our panel, I want to share with you 3 stories about grants we made to placemaking and the impact of those grants on belonging. The first story is a small grant, $10,000 made to the Women in Need Society to support a neighborhood group through our Neighborhood Grants program. This summer, residents of a Calgary housing complex in the neighborhood of Temple designed and built outdoor furniture to transform bleak sidewalks and grass patches into a warm and welcoming gathering place. Residents built the seating and they planted the gardens. They told us that they are incredibly proud of their carpentry skills and gardening skills that they built in the process. And they've told us of the difference that their volunteerism has already made in their community. They had a little bit of money left from the project, and they agreed to the kids' request. They bought soccer nets and balls, which resident Lisa keeps in her backyard and gives out to the kids anytime they want to use it. My second story is about Humanology, who was supported with a medium-sized grant, $45,000, from the Community Grants Program for their Shades film series. Humanology's mission is to center people facing systemic barriers by amplifying their stories and celebrating their humanity. They center and celebrate emerging creatives who have experienced systemic barriers due to their race, color, gender, sexuality, and/or ability, and create a platform where they are the main characters. Since 2015, they have created 50 short films. Shades Amplify Her Voice is a film series dedicated to centering, supporting, and celebrating the voices and lived experiences of Black women and 2S LGBTQIA+ individuals in Calgary. They work intensively with each cast cohort of 6 people for 18 months and then continue to engage them in their alumni within their network. There have been 2 seasons of Shades, and the cast of season 3 was revealed recently during an event as part of this year's Calgary Film Festival. Shades season 3 takes place this fall, and in the words of one artist in Humanology, I quote, "You are undeniably part of the people that make me call Calgary home, a home I'm happy to live in." And another artist, "I consistently feel seen, supported, and respected by them as though I belong and have a place in the world." My third story is about the Urban Society of Aboriginal Youth. USAE is undertaking a transformative initiative to construct an Indigenous Youth Centre in Forest Lawn. The project has been a dream of USAE for the past 15 years, and it's finally happening. With a comprehensive range of programs, the Youth Centre aims to empower both Indigenous and non-Indigenous youth. USAE's visionary approach seeks to create a lasting impact on the lives of Indigenous youth, promoting a sense of belonging, resilience, and pride within the community. It will provide a safe and inclusive space for urban Indigenous youth that truly belongs to them. In 2020, Calgary Foundation made a small grant to help USAE undertake a feasibility study and work with experts to decide if this dream could become a possibility. After much work and much waiting, USAE received a grant of nearly $4 million from the federal government for their project. Suddenly, their project had legs and it could continue. Through the major grants program at the foundation, we provided $800,000, helping them add the elements that will make this center a home, Accessibility features kitchen, gathering, creative and outdoor spaces. And in addition, many of the donor-advised funds in the foundation also support the programs that will bring this building to life. The project broke ground just this spring, and the walls are now under construction.
Okay, guys, I've now pumped you up, so these answers better be good. Alex, let's start here. We just heard from Eva about community. Is it just me, or does it feel like we're turning more into a have and a have-not society in this city? Let me ask you straight up, because in so many ways, you look at some of those stats, quality of life dropping, folks skipping meals, which is such a surprise. Yet people loving where they're at, seeing abundance, such as this exact space, abundance in so many places. Have we become, and have we always been a haves and have-not city?
Well, I've only been here 4 years, so I can't take the brunt of that question. But I'm sitting here in a room full of community changers and listening to Eva, and I'm thinking to myself, why is the arts guy answering this question? And what I come to over and over again is that institutions have become these luxury goods that are overconsumed by too few people. Whether that institution is political, whether that institution is educational, or whether that institution is cultural. And so that to me is that's how I justify being up on the stage, is because we are nurturing an institution and frankly, building and growing an institution as Arts Commons that is meant to be for all Calgarians. And so I see Calgary growing in the 4 years that I've been here. I've seen sort of the bifurcation that Eva was talking about. And I go back to institutions. We have a responsibility, regardless of what our institution is, to make sure that we are being intentional. And we talk about it at Arts Commons all the time, the difference between equality and equity. And how are we being intentional, and who are we being intentional towards, and how are we addressing in our building and designing of spaces, how are we addressing and solving for the problem while taking into consideration the communities or the people that have been the least well served. And so it's that intentionality that's allowing us as an arts organization to embrace our civic responsibility and actually be a part of the future of Calgary. And listen, if an arts organization can do it, then anybody can do it. So that to me is what I find exciting about where we're at in art history.
I'll follow up on that in a second, but Irfhan, I want to throw this to you, right? You know, business, community, hands in a lot of different pies, so to speak. What do you kind of think as you see this city evolving? The divide is real. We've seen the divide between the haves and have-nots, and they're not always as clean or as simply defined as the binary. But what do we need to do to start addressing these challenges? Alex here talks about institutions, and if an art organization can make the changes, then anyone can. How do you kind of see it from your unique lens?
It's like a massive question to try and solve, and let's see if we can do this in 60 seconds. But I mean, I think it is real. The data is obviously clear. You know, I'm a father of 3 children, and to see a stat that says that 39% of parents skip a meal to feed a child, that's mind-blowing to me. But it's not just a Calgary problem. And it's actually not just a Canada problem. It's such that we don't need to have an equalization solution 30 years from now.
That verbiage is so powerful. An equalization strategy today versus an early stage equity strategy. That's very powerful. Dwight, as this question comes to you from your perspective, your unique lens, what do you kind of think around how we're addressing the haves and the have-nots in our broader society?
That's a really challenging question to even think about. When I was looking at the question earlier, I was thinking are we even a half and half-not society? And is my knowledge base enough to even talk about this? And so I was kind of wrestling with it a little bit, and I do see a trend currently of people who never used to be have-nots are becoming have-nots. But that also doesn't change the foundation of where we separate each other before. And so we have some traditional have-nots, and now we have some new have-nots, and I'm not really sure who's at the top anymore. And I think for myself, when I decided to make a change in my own beliefs about myself, where I want it to be something, I want it to be the change in my family history. I wanted to break the back of poverty in my family line. That was a decision that I made. And I also had lots of opportunity and help around me. And there's a lot of people who make that decision and they don't have the help around them. They don't have the encouragement around them. And so I think one way to bridge that gap is creating programs and creating spaces and opportunities for people just to walk in and say, I believe in you, I'm proud of you, you can do it, you're special, you're important, you're worth fighting for. I think if we start sharing that could significantly change the future of our country and how we see ourselves. And I think that's probably one of the most important things, because when we start to see ourselves in a different light, in a powerful light, we realize we're worth fighting for. And we realize that you're worth fighting for, and you're worth fighting for even though you might be different from me.
Can I stick with you for a second, Dwight? And if you don't mind sharing as part of this conversation, as you made that choice and you got that help to say, I want to actually create a different trajectory on the history that my family has been living, and that through line, so to speak, with your own story. What role did space and place play to that? Like you talked about, what it could play for others. Do you mind sharing what role it played for you?
Yeah, I'm a mixed race person. I'm half Siksika, I'm a quarter Arabic and a quarter Welsh. My mom says, "Oh, this is my Welsh baby." But I actually went into the care of child welfare system, and for most people, going into care is a really terrible thing. But I moved into a group home that was owned and ran and operated by Indigenous people, and these guys who worked at the group home. One of them was in the room. I love you, Kirby. They really changed the way that I saw myself.
Right.
Because I was like, oh, like us Native people, we can own stuff. We can be bosses. We can laugh. We can be happy. We can, and it was a moment where I saw a picture of myself and who I thought I could be stretch and go farther, versus the picture that I always grew up with was like, oh, we're poor people. As my mom would say, we're poor people. So it's like, that's the way to.
That's just our fate. That's the line we follow. Sort of.
Yeah. And I didn't. There was other examples around me that I could, successful Indigenous people, but it's almost like I didn't see them. But when I moved into the group home, that's when I really saw them. And all those guys who worked there and the girls who worked there too, and everybody just poured so much love into me, and I started to believe in myself, and I started to fall in love with myself. And that was the thing that made a big change in my life.
I love that. Irfhan, can I start this next question?
Nothing I can say is going to be more interesting or inspiring than that. Let's just stay here for a little bit longer.
Oh, let's. I agree. Let's take a moment for that. But I'm still coming to you, Irfhan, for the next question. Good, nice try to get out of it. Can I talk to you about inclusivity for a second? Like, I think there's this really interesting tension between inclusivity. There's one tension, which is we have to do it properly. We have to make spaces and places truly inclusive. And then the other tension that we're seeing in our modern world, and you've quickly addressed trends beyond the four walls of our city or our province, is that there's an outright assault on inclusivity. That there's folks kind of strip it down and say, yeah, no, DEI, we're done with it, right? The I in inclusivity, it's over. In your mind, how are we, with some of these challenges or tensions, kind of try to do inclusivity the right way? And I start with you, primarily because of the Institute of Canadian Citizenship, which is, I know inclusivity is a core construct of what they believe. Any thoughts on that?
Well, my first thought is I just don't believe that second voice that you spoke of is the voice of the majority or the aspiration we have as a society. I just don't think that's the case. And as an example, like walking in here, by the way, it's very intimidating to be like, there's 1,100 people. I'm like, what did I sign up for? Oh my God. But that's like 0.1% of Calgary is here right now. And the only thing more powerful than, I would say, high correlation of the 1% that are saying some of those things is the 0.1% that are going to fix it. It's just not, just because you say it doesn't make it true. And I really do think that it's not perfect, okay? It's not perfect. But we know we can make it better. And if we all keep doing that, we will end up in the society that we dream to live in. Like, and I'm still sort of just like moved by your story, because it's a great example of something working. And it's not that it's working for everybody, because it isn't right now, but I'm glad it works for you, and it needs to work for more people like you. We keep working at it and not let people tell us it's not possible.
Alex, when I throw out the inclusivity question to you, well, what comes to mind? Whether it's through the lens of the arts or through some of your writing that you've recently done around relevance and conversations. And it doesn't even have to be that tension I introduced, but how do we create these inclusive spaces?
I think some people talked earlier about the divisiveness and how when things are messy, because they will get messy, there's a tendency for that 0.0001% to be like, you know what, I'm gonna sit this one out. Mm-hmm. And as a white cisgendered male on this panel and in my role, I had lots of folks come to me over the course of the last 3 years and say, are you gonna quit your job? Are you gonna make space? How are you gonna deal with DEI? And I was like, well, I choose to be a part of the solution, and I choose to be a part of the conversation, and I choose to leverage whatever privilege I have earned or not to help address this. And when Irfhan talks about the 0-0, like the people that are going to fix it, I think to myself, we all have a responsibility, no matter what we grew up, what privilege we have, and so I think to myself, for anybody that might be in a similar position to me, that says, oh, that's not a me problem, that's a them problem. I'm like, no, that's very much something that people like me need to lean into. Regardless of what role we occupy in our businesses, in our institutions. So that to me is something that I feel very passionate about, that, if we, like, you think about it, if Arts Commons is building all these spaces right now,
yes,
and we're working, with Dwight's group at Tribal Arts Society, that is that's the perfect, to me, we're just scratching the surface of what's possible. We are building spaces not so that we can determine how they will be used or by whom, but so that we can create spaces where the community and the communities can come and tell us how it is that they want to use these spaces. And we become the stewards of these environments whose success is measured by not me, but by folks that want to use them. I talk a lot about relevance, and I talk a lot about building trust. These are things that are bestowed upon you. I don't walk into a room and say, hey guys, guess what, I'm trustworthy, or I'm relevant, or that are things that you earn with different communities and different stakeholders. And so when I think about the work that we do, whether it's in designing new spaces or running programs or partnering with folks, there needs to be a level of intentionality and a level of leveraging whatever privilege we have as individuals or institutions to make sure that we are not maintaining the status quo, because that to me is, there's a danger in just sitting back and saying, well, I'm not going to get involved, and that there's a dangerous intention behind that action that I don't think people realize.
Dwight, did you want to jump into anything Alex put on there? I saw you nodding along.
Like about placemaking?
Yeah.
About placemaking. Yeah, when we started the Tribe Artist Society, we started it by asking the question, like, what would Calgary be like if every cool arts festival in Calgary, like, just imagine if 90% of every cool arts festival in Calgary was run by Indigenous people and staffed by Indigenous people. What if the medical facilities were run and staffed by Indigenous people and owned? What if the food banks were run by Indigenous people, staffed and owned? How would that change the way that we see ourselves and the way that others see us? Because sometimes there's this, this thought that we're a needy people. And so we're a hip hop organization, hip hop, arts, and Indigenous culture. But hip hop has its own core fundamental values in its culture, which is peace, love, unity, and having fun. And a big part of that in the Hip Hop Declaration of Peace, it also says that hip hop is for everyone. So we kind of found ourselves in this predicament, like, oh, we're like an Indigenous hip hop group of people who want to provide services to the entire general community. And I think when we started saying that, I found that people had a challenge adjusting to that. Like, oh, Indigenous people providing services to non-Indigenous people? That there might be a thought that Indigenous people aren't healthy enough to do that yet. And it's just something we just got to look at and recognize and realize that's real. As far as placemaking, like, we love being invited into other spaces and we love being included. But we also recognize that non-Indigenous people have had many, many years ahead of us to build the foundation for their own thing. Like my dad went to residential school. We know like 3 people couldn't gather to talk about making change in their community until like 1973 or something, Indigenous people. So like, I guess we're starting from 1973, right? And for many of people my age, we're the first people to go to university. So I think what we're going to see within placemaking is there's this opportunity of Indigenous people who are at the confidence level, at the know-how. We're going to start building these things even more and more, and we'll start seeing those. And so I see as a part of building placemakers, instead of asking how can we build and wrap this Indigenous program within our non-Indigenous environment, how can maybe we start that with a 5-year plan of training those people, building those people, a 10-year plan, to eventually be on their own. And that's real reconciliation.
Irfhan, I wanted to give you a shot at the sort of, we've almost leaned into it accidentally, but this arts and culture conversation that we've kind of been having, personal lived experience, Alex also talking about arts commons and trust. You've been a long time arts advocate, leader in the arts in your own way. How do you kind of see it? We saw it in the report as one of the bright lights, right, in many ways. What's your take on the arts and creating that sense of belonging in community?
I think most arts organizations, they exist not just only for entertainment, but it's also, there's a social mission with the work that we do. And that mission is about, obviously creating community and allowing spaces for conversation. And if they're built properly, they're open, inclusive spaces where anybody can come and feel like they belong. You have a great story on that. And they do 2 things, right? They celebrate who we are, and they challenge us to be better. Right? So the arts hold a mirror up to us to reflect both the good and bad of society, and that's part of that in having a conversation. Whereas if everyone's voices are heard in that conversation, you feel a sense of belonging, a sense of ownership. I'm part of this conversation, I'm part of this community. And I think if it's done extremely well, it's a huge part of the tool to continue to make us better and to try to pull us together, right? Both from a understanding of each other and welcoming of each other and respect for each other, but also broader in terms of some of the economic themes that we've been talking about. When you look at your neighbor and you say, you're going to a food bank, and if you're somebody that's not, because you've had the opportunity to engage in that, you're like, that's just not good enough, right? And now I need to fix that. And I think the best arts organizations inspire us to make our society even better and to fix the things that we find for each other and have conversations about how to do that proactively and progressively. But they need to be open and welcoming. And I was the board chair of Glenbow Museum. It's going through renovation. Glenbow was an amazing organization with a great history, an amazing collection, and great donors over time, especially the Harvey family. But
I was like, where are the butts coming at some point?
You couldn't figure out how to get in. It was the ultimate definition of. You mean
like literally?
No front door.
Yeah.
It needs a front door.
It's like the ultimate definition of like being exclusive. It's like a speakeasy, but for art. Like it just didn't work. And so if you look at it today, like the first thing we did is like just tear it up, make a front door. Make it open.
Yes.
Make it east facing to speak to Indigenous place.
Yes.
Make it vibrant and class and like allow people to feel like I can walk in there. Not a place where it's like if I don't know where it is or I don't understand the art that I'm not allowed to be there. And that is one of the things I think is a society broadly, not just again in Calgary, but across the country, that we're seeing happen. That the arts are coming into their own to understand that they have a vital role to play in making our society better.
We have a few minutes left, and I want to kind of go to a final question. And Irfhan, I love that point that you made around arts holding up a mirror, right? In many ways, the more sort of pedestrian sort of interpretation is that, you know, the reason the arts are a bright light is because it's pure escapism. People can forget the day-to-day versus actually be reflected to who they are, have a greater sense of belonging, not just simply escape their reality for a moment and feel better about it.
Depending on the show you're looking at, you may not want to escape your reality.
True, but it's not purely that, I guess is the point. I think that the idea of the mirror is...
It's done well. I mean, there's a symbiotism to the programming that has to happen to get people to be comfortable and enjoy what they're seeing, but also then push them at the same time. You can't do just either or.
I want to end with this final question. Alex, maybe I'll start with you, which is a bold idea, a bold thought, a bold interpretation. Could be tangible, could be strategic. Your interpretation, whatever you'd like. Something that would change the way Calgary grows fundamentally without leaving people behind. Could be about place or space, but a thing that is on your mind that you want to verbalize here that could kind of be a Kickstarter of sorts.
You had to start with me, huh?
I did, yeah. No, I really did, yeah. It's like Alex hadn't spoken for a while.
You can do it. You can kick it to Dwight.
No. So, you know, one of the amazing things about the history of Arts Commons is, you know, we opened in 1985. We're about to turn 40, not too distant a future, and we were built as a facility to accommodate 300,000 patrons a year. Now, in 1985, that was 50% of the population of Calgary.
Right.
I've never heard of a space being built to accommodate that large of a percentage of a city's population. And what not many people know in Calgary is that within a year, those facilities were at capacity. And to me, that's such a beautiful story about building a space and offering cultural experiences that Calgary at that moment in time just couldn't get away from. And I think to myself, I mean, Calgary's changed in the 4 years that I've been here.
Yes.
We are one of the fastest growing cities in the country. And I think to myself, how do we replicate that experiment where we can build and double the amount of spaces we have today and watch Calgarians from every corner of this city gravitate towards this downtown location because it is a place where cultural identity is celebrated on their terms, not ours. And I think to myself, that is not an exercise in architecture. That is not an exercise in design. That is an exercise in relationship building. And this idea, if you build it, they will come, could not be farther from the truth. And so to me, this bold idea, which we are living right now, and I have colleagues and board members in this room, where we are building something that's never been seen before. And what I want people to understand is that the renderings we see on the front page of the paper, that's not success. Success is when we cut the ribbon on that sucker and watch people come like they did in 1985. Now, mind you, a very different Calgary, but they're still hungry for that experience because it reflects cultural identity and cultural celebration that in a way that makes room for their definition. And I can't imagine a more deserving gift for a city that is changing and evolving as fast as ours to have that place, whether it's Arts Commons or the Glenbow, which is across the street, and others, to embrace that responsibility and that institutional humility of saying, this place is yours and for you, and we've done it together. And that to me is the bold idea, and the jury's still out, but Calgary's trying it. And I don't know any other city right now that is attempting this experiment with the same boldness that we are here today.
Dwight, can I turn it to you? Same question. A bold idea, something on your mind around how we kind of continue to grow, continue to evolve, but that fundamentally might change the way we do that without leaving folks behind.
Yeah, I definitely think like what we're doing. I'd love to see like more Indigenous-led art studios and places that are run and owned by us, and also where we service more general community members. But I also think a thing that could change the city in a really good way without leaving anybody behind is a fundamental thing to my own personal art practice. Is the sentence of bringing the art to the people. The first time, when I was a kid, I moved from Bowness to Forest Lawn, and I moved in the beginning of summer, so all my friends were still lived in Bowness, so I would jump on the one, and I would take the bus, and I was sitting on the bus, grade 3, too young to be on the bus by myself, and this guy jumps on the bus. Oh no, it was the girl who jumped on first, and she was all flustered, and I was like, what's going on here? And she starts yelling at this guy who's outside of the bus, and then he jumps in. And he starts yelling at her how much he loves her, and anyways, they walk to the back of the bus, and by the time they go to the next bus stop, they fell out of the bus back door together, and they kissed. And it was a play.
Oh, I was not expecting that to be the punchline. Wait, it was a play?
It was a play. It was a piece of art that they created and they brought to me.
And you were unsuspecting entirely?
I didn't know, no.
Oh,
And so that's one powerful thing about hip hop is, to me it's not about recording music and doing this.
Yeah.
I mean, I do a little bit of that stuff, but it's being at the bus stop with my buddies and making that bus stop just come alive. It's about setting up my DJ equipment on the bike path where nobody expects a random dance party to happen. It's about getting groups together and then just walking up to people in the park. Hey, would you like to see a commercial about racism? And then just doing it. And so I think that's one thing, is if we have those spaces in Calgary that create, you want to see the beautiful tree with apples on it, and boom, that's the thing. But we don't see the place like Monday Rap Night that we run, like the kid who comes in who doesn't, I want to rap, I kind of like poetry, and then they say their name on the mic, and then the next round they try to say something else, and 2 weeks later they wrote a song. The week after that they're doing a show with us. So I think if we invest in those places where those seeds can germinate, Calgary will really become like that what they always talk about, I forget the sentence, a vibrant city, you know what I mean? Like where it's really happening. Yeah.
Irfhan, I can ask you the whole question, or I could just say follow that.
You keep making me follow this guy. There's like 200 people in the crowd who are like,
pleasure.
I'm gonna take the C train home and make out with my friend and call it like community art.
The amount of pleasure it gives me that you have to follow that is very high. Very, very high. So please follow that. But the bold idea.
Your question was, what's a bold idea?
That's right.
And so, we started the conversation and I was talking a little bit about equity. How do you create equity? So that's a really nice thing to say, but what do you do about that? And to me, for children, that's like basic things, right? It's like access to like quality sports and facilities and opportunity, because In many places, like I grew up in a way that I couldn't get access to sport because we just couldn't afford it.
Right.
It's access to the arts. It's creating opportunity for all the things that if you were a parent that could afford anything, what would you have your children have? Right? It's also like it's about like transportation and the ability to get around, and it's a fair city, so you don't have to wait an hour and a half for the bus or whatever it is. It's about infrastructure. It's about community infrastructure. It's about a lot of community infrastructure. And if you do that and create a city that has, like lots of that type of infrastructure, then you have an opportunity for the young people that grow up in there to have equity, the opportunity to be inspired, to be healthy because of sport as an example, to be inspired because of the art, to have the opportunity to have access to all parts of the city. So how do you do that though? Because that's really expensive, right? So my bold idea is you get other people to pay for it. So you get like the federal government, you get international corporations, and you get the IOC to pay for that for Calgary by bidding on the Olympics.
Ladies and gentlemen, I said what they do is impressive and meaningful, but I hope you got to see who they are is even more so. One more time, Alex, Sarian, Irfhan, Dwight, Farahat.
So you've been our MC, you've been the moderator for our discussion, and I want to also let everyone know that you are also a very valued member of Calgary Foundation's Education and Lifelong Learning Grants Committee, so thank you. I'd also like to extend big thanks to Jose Duque and musicians from El Sistema Calgary Orchestra for their excellent opening performance. Jackie Bromley for sharing her thoughtful wisdom that helps guide us on our pathway towards reconciliation. To the Calgary Foundation CEO Eva Friesen for her report to the community, and to the entire team at Calgary Foundation for their work. Our sponsor tonight is one of our valued investment managers, which is Crest Point Real Estate. So thank them for their support for this event. And then the beautiful furniture that you see on stage here is courtesy of Modern Rentals. So thank you, Modern Rentals. And then very importantly, I would like to invite one person at each table to take home the centerpiece tonight. So don't leave them here. They're absolutely beautiful. Take them home. Make someone happy. All right? And lastly, as I think Eva may have said originally, or at the beginning, next year marks our 70th birthday, so we are absolutely looking forward to seeing you here again next year for that celebration. So that's it for now. Enjoy the rest of your evening, drive safe, and see you next year.